guys, we're here at the SSAA booth at the SHOT Expo, and I've got the man himself, Geoff Jones. Geoff, thank you very much for your time and speaking with all of us.
You're welcome, Ozzy. Yep.
So what we wanted to do, guys, is the biggest thing at the moment is what's happening politically. There's still a lot of uncertainty out there. So I guess, Geoff, what we just wanted to have a bit of a talk about was a little bit of the background with what's happened in the last few weeks with the SSAA, and just, you know, sort of future direction, even though we can't predict things, but just where we'd like to see things go in the future with regards to the political scene, and also at the Attorney General's level and the new committees that, as far as I'm aware, have invited the SSAA to be a part of.
Yeah, certainly, Ozzy. Look, it's been a bit of a bumpy road. Yep. There's been a review of the National Firearms Agreement going on for a while. Actually, yep. It started before the Sydney Siege. The Sydney Siege did have some recommendations, yep. And supposedly some of the review was supposed to be focused towards that. Yep. Okay, there's been a couple of bumps along the way. Yep. There's been concern voiced about the ADLA. Yes. We don't see that as a concern at all. Yep. The ADLA clearly, under current legislation under the NFA, fits squarely into Category A firearm, yep. Which is the firearm of should be of least concern. Yes. So we're actually really quite adamant and vehement that that's where it should remain. Yep. And that's the position we'll be taking and we'll be taking forward. Yep. By the same token, we are concerned that there may well be a hidden political agenda here, yes. And yes. That this will actually be raised, and we don't know what direction it might take. Yep. But we think it's unfair and to be quite frank, almost dishonest. Yeah. And we'll be taking that position forward as well. Yep. We would hope that the bureaucrats, the Canberra bureaucrats, and the politicians will listen to us. Yep. We're a bit concerned when it's been said from Canberra that all the police ministers have pressured the federal department to take this on board. Yep. We don't believe that to be the case. In fact, yeah. We believe it's been the opposite way around. Yes. That words have been basically put in the mouths of both state police ministers and yep. And premiers, and we think that it's, as I say, a fairly crass political exercise, yeah. And as I say, we'll be defending this as best we can. So, right. So at least now there's some consultation taking place. Yep. Previously there was little chance of consultation, yeah. But literally thanks to pressure being put on, principally by the SSAA initially, and yep. The other organisations are with us. Yep. We've been having meetings and we're speaking with a fairly united voice on a united front. Yep. And we'll be looking for a level of fairness yep. Out of this at the end of the day. Yep. Right,
because we've, you know, I've said this on the YouTube channel about, you know, it's not just the ADLA. There's more to this, you know, and I listed a few of the proposals there with regards to what they're saying is high capacity magazines, you know, and the one thing that I have a real issue with personally is this cosmetic appearance, because, you know, I'd be quite happy for anyone out there to prove to me that cosmetic appearance is a risk to public safety. That's my personal view on it. Those sort of things are very big. It's not just the ADLA, and that's what we're trying to get out there. And most people also know on the page that I was trying to get people motivated to get out there, meet with local members. I've met with several different members of Parliament now. Had some so-so responses, but also some really good responses. So would you think that it would be fair probably to say on that note that, look, don't sort of discredit going and meeting with your local member just because they might be from, say, Labor or LNP or whoever, because personally I found it's quite surprising where they sit on the fence.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't agree more. Yep. The SSAA is an organisation that is not politically aligned. Yes. We have no specific alignments. We are forced to be a lobby group. We would rather run a sport and an organisation, yeah. But we're forced to be a lobby group, and we will lobby on behalf of the sport, yep. And legitimate firearms ownership. And I agree that there are political representatives belonging to all parties and independents who are actually, in some cases, firearms owners and yep. Shooters and the rest of it. And as you said, representation from ordinary members yes. is extremely important. Yep. Political, polite, factual yep. Responses or representation yes. by ordinary individuals yep. is probably what is going to turn it at the end of the day.
Yes.
One of the weaknesses we have is people join an organisation like the SSAA. We are large, we are strong, but at the end of the day we speak with one voice, and we can say, yes, we've got 170,000 members nationwide, we've got 60,000 members in Queensland, but there is one voice. But that groundswell of logical, factual opinion coming from ordinary voters to their local MPs, I believe is what could easily turn the tide at the end of the day. Rather than people just sitting there saying, well, I've paid my $50 or whatever it might be, and you've got to do the job for us. That just doesn't cut it. That's the reality of politics.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that doesn't mean, just so people are clear, that doesn't mean that the SSAA are going to be sitting back doing nothing.
On the contrary.
All it means is, well, we're all in this together, and that's why all of us have got to do what we can. And,
that's right.
And I sort of feel, I guess it's like turning a negative into a positive, because I've seen everyone was so negative, oh no, the Adler stuff, and what are we in for, and everyone was sort of scrambling. But I think it's turned into a positive, because compared to, well, I'm old enough to remember like 96 and what happened there, but it's turned into a positive now because we do have social media, we've got the internet, there's more communication means there, and a lot more people, especially those of us who are of the age who remember 96, have gone, hey, it's not going to happen a second time, and that's what's motivated people to get out there. And I think there's a bit of a backlash, to be quite honest. I'm not sure if you'd agree with that, but it's a backlash against the government and what their plans were with this.
Look, I really would have to agree with that. I think, in all fairness, without being too critical, I think there was something of an agenda here where this was going to slip under the radar. And I think now, as you mentioned, because of social media and the fact that we are in much better positioned as a representative organisation, and we're working together very closely with other representative organisations, which is very refreshing as well.
Absolutely.
And as I say, I think that it could easily turn the tide, as you say, and this backlash. And it comes back down to an issue of fundamental fairness. That's what we're coming back to, is thinking, let's not allow our politicians to be purveyors and peddlers of fear, hide under the concept of terrorism and all the rest of it. Yes, there's an issue that they have to take care of. That's their role as a government. But of course, people who have access to firearms in this country are very heavily scrutinised, very heavily regulated. There is no legitimate reason why they shouldn't have access to legitimate, low-risk firearms as we do. And as I say, that is the fundamental premise of fairness that I refer to. That should be taken on board. And in fact, if the government was as committed as they suggest, there are many, many other ways to deal with the potential issues they have, rather than constantly running the smoke and mirrors campaign of doing something by restricting the existing legitimate firearms owners.
And I think that's what a lot of us have that issue with. And me personally, I look at it as, fair enough, we have a licensing system, and a licensing system is simply there to, in my view, to stop a mentally or ill person or a criminal from legally going into a gun shop and purchasing a firearm, because we all know, regardless if a criminal wants to purchase a black market firearm or something, they're simply going to do that, and nothing you or I can do will prevent that. So I agree there with the licensing system, absolutely, but I would definitely like to see something more along the lines of like the New Zealand model, where they've still got the access to, they are low capacity semi-autos there. And just, it is common sense and sensible things. I mean, people know that I do occupational shooting, so why should I be any more trusted with a semi-auto than anybody else here who's gone through the same check to get a license in the first place?
Well, again, I agree with that wholeheartedly. In fact, I had a meeting with the Attorney General's department only within the last fortnight. I put exactly that premise to them. Why should one group who have been appropriately checked have any more trust than another group in the appropriate circumstances? And I've actually only come from a meeting this morning with the combined New Zealand representative for shooters, who actually happens to be here at the show.
We met him just before. We had a cuppa with him.
Excellent, good. No, good bloke, understands the issues, and they, again, the same thing. They have seen the error of their ways. I think it was 1983 or 4. They actually reversed their broken licensing system, and they are having no more or less problems with firearms in all that time than we are. I spoke to the Canadian Gary Breitkreutz only a couple of weeks ago, who has been out here, who was the champion of reversing the Canadian system on which the Australian model was based, and he indicated exactly the same situation. There has been no change whatsoever because of registration of firearms and restriction of firearms from appropriately licensed people. We all support that the wrong people should not have access to firearms.
That's right.
But once you've been checked, you've got the balances in place. There should be no further.
So would you guys support, or if there's the opportunity in future with meeting with, you know, and being a part of different committees, pushing for like a New Zealand-based model or a Canadian-based model, something in the terms of, you know, having access to the semi-auto firearms, having access to suppressors, that sort of thing? Is that something the SSAA would be interested in doing?
Absolutely. At the moment, unfortunately, we have on a prioritisation basis, we have other issues that we need to focus on. Very, very unfair restrictions that really need to be addressed immediately. Suppressors, there is a perfectly legitimate case for suppressors under the appropriate circumstances, and we've actually put this to the state and federal ministers now over a number of years, and they can be regulated as a number of other firearms. They can be regulated as well, but there is a legitimate case for access to suppressors. Semi-automatic firearms, at least for competition shooting, we are severely restricted on a world basis. We're very successful in a competition basis because SSAA is a very broad church. We've got hunters, we've got local shooters, we've got international competitors. Actually, our action match team just came back and won the World Team Championships at Bianchi Cup. Now, they do that against all the odds because they can't get access to the most appropriate firearms to do that. And those firearms are no more or less dangerous than anything else. It's again, I become frustrated, and I keep using the term just crass politics. It's politicking. This is not about public safety. This is simply about one politician or another trying to make themselves look good to people who don't understand the issues, and they are a constant misrepresentation of the real position. And they have many other avenues they could take to deal with illicit use of firearms, as we would have, pardon me, as they would all say, deal with the drug issue in Australia, and 98% of the firearms issues will disappear immediately. And of course, no, we're the soft target, so they go for us, knowing full well that will not change the criminal and illicit use of firearms.
Absolutely, and I like to call it, and I've said it before, like on my Facebook page, it's what I like to call feel-good legislation, because it makes people who don't understand the reality of firearms and the checks and everything that we go through and the background checks, it makes them people feel good that something's being done, even though they may not understand it. It just makes them feel good, and in reality it doesn't actually do much. You know, and that sort of thing really sort of frustrates me, because any of us who have firearm knowledge can see the areas and the contradictions in the legislation and how certain things have absolutely no evidence behind them for public safety, and it's very, very frustrating. But as you say, like, you know, for politicians, they can go both ways because the votes keep them in the job. So if they're sort of thinking, well, okay, we might be able to get a bit of a leg up with this, well, we'll sort of lean this way or lean that way, and that comes back to what we're both saying about having not only members, but just members of the shooting community in general, meeting with their local members and getting out there.
They don't need to be members of an organisation to step up and claim their legitimate right to the freedom involved. And we're not talking about rights, we're talking about general freedoms to make the application. If you've been a good citizen, why shouldn't you be trusted?
Absolutely.
That's right. And you, as you say, the feel-good politics, that's true. And it's very disappointing, because if our politicians are prepared to, let's just say, misrepresent this position to the community, what else are they misrepresenting the position on? And the community is largely being, you know, in hoodwinked, and that should be of concern to every citizen when every major party does this for their own ends.
Absolutely.
That certainly is of concern. I would hope that there's some change in the wind for that, but we're not looking too good at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see.
So just in sort of closing, Geoff, finally, what would you like to see, and what sort of direction are we heading in, you know, from the SSAA point of view with being on these committees? What sort of issues and where would you like to see things go?
For the future, I really would like to see the responsible bureaucrats and the politicians actually listen to us, and when we ask them, what is your supporting evidence for pushing this line or making these decisions, and they keep suggesting to us that it's evidence-based, but they drag evidence from completely non-related issues, and it's the hoary old issue where they go back, we don't want it to become like America. Well, it's nothing like America. Never actually has been. It's a completely different culture. Our culture is so much more similar to New Zealand and to Canada, and maybe that comes from the British model. And there's a classic thing, they'll say, oh, well, Britain, they banned handguns. And what happened? They banned handguns, and handgun crime rose exponentially almost overnight. So banning and restriction from the legitimate people doesn't have any demonstrable effect, doesn't help in any way, shape or form. So we would hope that there might be a bit of a change of mood, that they may listen to some reason and logic, and that I should say, with a responsible base of legislation, we may be able to together take this forward and create a safer society. With our support, I believe that the society would become safer, because I believe that the vast majority of legitimate firearms owners, and almost all of them, would support the general view that they do want responsible firearms laws.
Agree.
They're prepared to be responsible. All we ask is give us a chance.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's asking too much in a civilised society.
So I think it's a good first step with what we've got is, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I was reading on e-alerts and so forth, the SSAA, they've got a position on both committees or panels now, have they?
Yes, there's a working group, and then there's the Justice Ministers panel. I've been invited to sit on both of those. And as I say, and I'll be certainly taking a certainly polite but firm position, literally to represent the interest of legitimate firearms owners. That doesn't mean we'll be listened to, but I would hope. I've met Minister Keenan previously, and he's really quite a reasonable fellow. But of course, he is a part of cabinet as well, and he's part of a party in the government, and he certainly doesn't probably have the final say on this, and I respect that. By the same token, it's his role to balance these issues and take a strong recommendation. Again, on behalf of the broader community, and we do represent a legitimate part of the broader community, as is evidenced by this show on the weekend. First time in Brisbane, and I think we've got attendance of something like 14,000 odd people. They're not necessarily all members, and the comments made to me, the number of families who are here has been both surprising and pleasing, which indicates that shooting in its broadest context is, as we say, a safe, fun, family sport, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be treated as any other sport is treated with the appropriate
and this is the thing, we deserve the respect like any other sporting organisation. We're not breaking the laws here, we're simply doing something that is completely legal. And my personal view on it is we should be supported 110% and even given a pat on the back from the government, because we're the model citizens of the community.
That's exactly right. We're the ones that have been checked and vetted and given the big tick. We're the ones that actually should be elevated in their opinion and status.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Geoff. I appreciate you talking to us, mate, and all the best for the future with it. Cheers.
No worries. Good man. Thank you.